about this for just a minute.
Which, is this immunology immune response?
No,
or the
immunology, this is immunology,
immunization?
immunizations. So if we think about acquired immunity, which we just finished talking about, right? In order for our bodies to acquire immunity, the body must be able to do certain things. It has to be able to recognize non-self. The immune system has to recognize non-self, okay? Second thing is that the things that it's recognizing has to have antigenic specificity. And what that means is it has to have proteins and carbohydrates that mark them non-self, because that's how the immune system will react to them and make antibodies against, okay? So therefore, if our bodies get hit with endotoxin because they're lipids, the immune system can't do anything to them because they're lipid by nature, okay? And the last thing is that our bodies need to form memory, right, against these infectious agents. If we have those, then we acquire long-lasting immunity, okay? Now, there are other types of immunological processes that I want you to be aware of. And so I love this particular chart because it really lays it all out for you. So you can acquire immunity, and you can do that either naturally or artificially. And let's just look at the natural immunity for just a second, right? So if we look at acquired natural immunity, actively, you come down with the infectious agent, the body goes through the whole process of finding that infectious agent, tagging it, destroying it, making antibodies against it, and now you have long-term protection against that infectious agent. That doesn't mean that you won't get sick, but if you do want to do that. But if you do get sick, it's going to be less severe, and the actual period of time that you're going to have to deal with it is going to be short. Okay? So that's long term. You can acquire immunity naturally and passively if there are immunoglobulins that cross the placenta into the developing fetus and protects them that way, or if you breastfeed. Breastfeeding is now becoming a well understood mechanism, where before we just thought, oh, how nice, mama's breastfeeding. But now we know that there's a lot of really good important, not only nutrition, but a lot of good importance with bonding and all kinds of different things that can happen. However, because these particular immunoglobulins that the baby's getting from mama are not the baby's, they do degrade. And so this is short term. Okay? It'll protect them from a small period of time, but not forever. They don't acquire immunity that way. I can't say here's acquired immunity for you. Okay? Doesn't happen that way. We can also acquire immunity artificially. And so here's a young gentle dude getting a little bit of a vaccination. The immune system doesn't know that if it's an infectious agent or it's just a piece of it. It reacts to that non-self entity and it develops immunity to it. So even if you acquire a vaccination and an immunization, it's long term. That doesn't mean that you're not going to get sick. That just means if you get sick, it's less severe and it's shortened in the amount of time that you're going to have to deal with that infectious agent. Okay? So acquiring immunity artificially by vaccination is just as good as acquiring immunity because you come down with the infectious agent. You get the infection. You can also acquire immunity artificially and passively. And so we do this by giving individuals whole blood from somebody who's had the infection, or parts of the components of the blood, so convalescent plasma. There is another way we do this, it's called gamma globulin. Gamma globulin is IgG from thousands of donors. It gets concentrated and purified, and then we can give it to individuals, right? So sometimes people who are traveling the world, like I want to go to Costa Rica. And when I go to Costa Rica, I will get the vaccines from that area, but I will probably also ask for a gamma globulin regionally. So this is going to be from the people who live in that area, for the infectious agents that most affect them, because they are immune to some of those things. And I want to be protected against them. Okay?
Are they just like injected or IV?
It hurts.
Yeah.
So I got one for a different reason. When I was a young kiddo, young whippersnapper, I got stuck with a needle, and when I was drawing blood from a patient, and I reported it to my supervisor, and they said, well, we would like to get blood from the patient to see if they're HIV positive or hepatitis B positive, right? So we went in there and we asked them if that we could take a little bit of those tests. They said no. So the only recourse I had was to basically take a gamma globulin, and they gave me gamma globulin. So it gave me right here, and it hurt. It hurt a lot, but I took it because I made a mistake. We know that patient. I mean, come on, she was an older woman. She didn't have HIV or Hep B, but we wanted to be sure. So when they said we'd like to give you gamma globulin, I said absolutely. Okay. Yes.
How do you stick yourself with the needle? Like,
It's if you're at work.
It's
or you
well,
use
okay.
school.
So it's harder to do now because
Yeah.
of all the safety features that they put into needles and syringes. But back in the day, I would show off in front of people. I would be getting like 5 injections all at once, and I would have the tops of the needles in my mouth, and I'd be putting them in like this, right? I was stupid. Okay, I get it. I was stupid, but this was not a stupid thing. This was I stuck myself just accidentally.
It can happen pretty easily. I had a doctor do it to me.
It happens.
Poked you accidentally?
I
It
stabbed
was a
myself
guy.
at work. It was a sepsis.
I probably shouldn't tell that story anymore, Eric, about being.
I poked him with cleaners all the time.
It just shows you how stupid you are when you're 22.
Showing off, drawing blood.
Showing off. I told you about the time I showed off in front of that pretty girl, didn't I? Stuck myself in too.
Oh no, I don't think we
But
did
she
that.
was nice. She said, "Oh, yeah, take the blood."
Do they have to take a lot or just like a
No,
normal
just
blood
a
draw?
little bit. I mean, I probably took 5 mils.
Oh, when you had to get tested, or?
She let me. I mean, she let me take the blood from her,
Yeah.
but the older lady wouldn't let me. Oh, hell
It
no.
was another chance to talk to her.
Oh no, I mean, just think of it this way. A young lady who's pretty intelligent, and she was, is not gonna date some show-off guy that stuck himself in the needle.
Now I need to poke you again and draw more blood.
Okay, any questions? So I do have this kind of talked about here, but I do wanna, I'm just gonna pass them up because I already discussed them. But I do wanna stop here for just a moment and reflect on my hero. This is Jonas Salk. Jonas Salk was a badass. So he was in the process of developing 3 very important vaccines. He developed the first polio vaccine, okay? And so there's another vaccine that was actually, there's another polio vaccine that was developed post him. The 2 vaccines are differentiated as the Salk vaccine, which was his, and the Sabin vaccine, which was actually by another scientist. We'll talk about those later when we talk about polio, when we talk about the nervous system.
Did you say salt?
His name is Salk, Jonas Salk, right there, his name.
Oh, salt.
Salk. So in his lifetime, he developed the first polio vaccine. He developed the first vaccine against pneumonia. And when he was working, before he passed away, he was working on one of the first vaccines that would have helped people who were immunocompromised because of an infectious agent like HIV. It wasn't necessarily about HIV, but he was working on something like it, which led everybody's ideas to how we would develop HIV vaccines, which are in clinical trials right now. Okay. Good? So, and then this is what gamma globulin looks like. Now, gamma globulin can be, the way that I got it was, of course, intramuscularly, but you can do it intravenously also, right? Convalescent plasma, like it. And what I want to tell you about gamma globulin is it's IgG, right? But it's actually taken from thousands of humans, and then it's pooled, it's concentrated, and it's purified, and then we can give it to individuals to protect them. It's short term, right? Most people will say you have protection for about 1 or 2 months. But that's good protection, right? If you potentially have been exposed to HIV or Hep B, then that's good protection, right? That might give the immune system enough time to make sure that that's not gonna cause you problems.
So you said you took the one you went to Costa Rica.
I have not gone to Costa
Oh,
Rica.
no.
I wanna go to Costa Rica, and I would
So
take it when I go
Would
there.
it be better to do that alongside vaccines when traveling?
Yeah, from my perspective, yes. However, Sarah, you need to make sure it gets ordered ahead of time, because they're hard to get. Okay?
How far ahead of time? Like a few months?
You can check with your physician. He'll probably say, you don't need that, you're a young, healthy woman, you don't need it. Ask him. All right, we also have antivenoms and antitoxins that we can make. The most famous probably antivenoms that we have is against a rattlesnake here in Texas. We do have that, so if you get snake bit, we could use this to bind up all of the venom that gets put into your body. So that is great, except it's very expensive and most insurances will not cover it because they consider it that you were doing something unsafe, that you got bit by a snake. Yes, that's correct. Walking in my backyard in Bastrop, I could get bit by a rattlesnake and that would be an unsafe act, right? And it cost about $40,000 to actually get treatment for anti-venom against rattlesnake.
You said 40,000?
My friend had almost the same, did I tell you about him? He had a garden, and his garden was enclosed in a meshwork, and a coon got, did I tell you this story?
No.
A coon got in there, and he went in there to try to free the coon, and when he tried to approach the coon attacked him and bit him and scratched him. And he goes, man, it cost $30,000 to get the rabies vaccine. Couldn't believe how
Why is it
expensive
so
it was.
expensive?
Because it can be.
Why?
Because it can be.
It's in America. But
Insurance.
why?
Because it's America.
Not because people
Because this is
say,
America.
because this is America.
Well, I understand that, but like, what,
You need to like run for president and give us free healthcare.
what, besides that, right, so how do they make the rabies vaccine? Or the
Anti-venom? So they use horses, or they use sheep, or they use goats. And they inject it with a small amount. The animal produces all this antibody. They take that, they purify it, and then we can get it. And we can also use recombinant technology to do it also.
And that equals a price of $30,000.
I didn't say that. I said it cost $30,000. But that's
But
just.
why would they do that?
Because it's America and
Yeah,
money
be-
is
be-
king.
Sorry, I
because
just
they
don't-
can.
No, because money is king here. They
Because
don't
they
care.
can.
They know that you value.
It doesn't cost that much.
But then if a healthcare provider looks at you and basically, you must have the idea of like, well, if you have rabies, it is what it is because you ain't gonna be able to afford it or you're gonna be dead for a while. Like,
You know what my way of thinking is? If you need to go to the emergency room for something and like for say I don't have insurance, and if I got bit by like a rabid animal,
For you to do it, right?
well, you can still get the treatment. That what are they gonna do? They can't eat you.
You can always,
So,
you can
you
always
can-
negotiate. The hospital's
I
gonna be
don't
interested in
negotiate,
getting
I'm just
something.
like, screw you guys.
Even if you have a high bill with them, over a period of time, you're gonna tell them like, hey, I really can't.
When I
afford
had my
this,
shoulder
and
replaced,
so
the people at St. David's looked at me and said, it's gonna cost this much money, but your copay is $1,800. And they looked at me and said, can you afford that? And I looked at my wife and said, what do you think, hon, should we sell the car? And the lady was so sad, I'm like, I'm just kidding. I'll pay it. So,
But for some people, that's.
oh, for sure, I mean, that's the real
car.
thing, right? Yeah. But, you know, I mean, they were gonna do a $80,000 procedure on me, and they wanted me to pay $1,800. I think that was fair. That was very fair.
Well, now they passed a law that it doesn't go on your credit anymore, like it doesn't go against you, like if you're trying to buy a home.
But things, because unfortunately, some of the hospitals that are running nonprofit, they have to break even, right, or they'll go under. So, they treat a lot of people that can't pay. So what they do is they bump up the prices for everything else. Like for instance, I got prescribed,
And that's what's gonna happen with free healthcare.
hold on, no, hold on. So I got prescribed a little, machine that allows, electrostatic pulses to be put into my muscle. Thank you.
Tens.
I didn't know what it was called. I wanted to call it tensometer, but I don't think that's what it's called. Anyway, so it was reasonable, right? It was like $1,000 and I paid $100. But the supplies are where they get you. So they gave me a 6-pack of batteries and they charged $50 for the 6-pack of batteries. And there's nothing special about those batteries.
Disrespectful.
It is disrespectful. I really don't
I'd be like,
that.
I'll take it without batteries.
I said, I don't need any more batteries, I'll buy them on my own.
Well,
I went
that's
to
the thing,
Walmart.
is it's not the hospitals themselves, it's the manufacturers of certain things that put these prices up. That's why you'll see more and more doctors' offices these days that aren't accepting insurance anymore, is because it's too expensive to take insurance for the office.
I don't know anything about that side of the business, I only
That-
know about the
well,
clinical
it's like
side.
an insurance company tells you what to charge for something. And then you have to charge the patient sometimes more than
I'm-
that to
I'm-
give it a break.
So people always kind of joke about the insurance that we have here at ACC.
What is it?
It's a Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Oh,
That's a really good one.
I'm like, dude,
With
I don't
Texas?
know where the hell you come from. I come from the pharmaceutical world. We have great insurance, and this one is better.
Blue Cross Blue Shield and United Healthcare are really good.
All right, so let's talk about vaccines. So please be respectful if you want to say something. Don't attack anybody on either side of the spectrum that you belong on or that you don't like or whatever. Don't do that, but be respectful. But I'm okay if you talk about your beliefs, but just don't attack anybody, okay? So first of all, I want to tell you the science behind everything. So first of all, people were really mad because they thought that the pharmaceutical companies were using the population of the United States and the UK and part of Europe as guinea pigs for the coronavirus vaccines. What they didn't understand and what they seek to understand was that we have been doing coronavirus research for 20, 30 years already, ever since SARS-1 came out. So we knew how to make vaccines against it because we had already. So when the Chinese actually shared the actual sequence of the virus with us, we could immediately start to put together the idea for the vaccine because we had that sequence. And because we had already known about the spike protein, we targeted the spike protein. And it was a researcher from the University of Texas who first conceptualized how the actual spike protein looked. I told you this story already. Because of that, we could move very quickly to do clinical trials, right? So we did clinical trials. The first clinical trial you can see takes about 100 or so volunteers, and it's a safety profile. It's what do we expect to see from individuals, which is a cross-section of the population. What do we expect to see from the individuals who take that vaccine? What is gonna be the pharmacodynamics of the actual vaccine that's put into the body? What are we gonna see from an immunological response in their bodies? And is there gonna be any kind of anaphylactic reactions that we're gonna see? So they're looking at all those things for these 100 people. Yes.
What's the normal time range for each one? Are they the same or different? Like they monitor the phase one people for a week
About 3 months.
for each different phase?
But a lot of times, pharma companies spread them out.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll do one year because it costs $3 billion to do each
Yeah.
of the stages, right? So,
But usually, generally speaking, it's about 3 months.
okay, so that profile came out correctly, so they went to, again, stage 2. So now, what are the more common side effects? You know, who are the volunteers? There's several hundred volunteers that we're looking at. Again, it's a safety profile. What do we expect to see? We see more people. Are there any more? And so this is supposed to be a cross section. We ask for volunteers, and so if enough people don't volunteer, we start paying them, right? So you can get in a clinical trial and sometimes make $3,000 for that clinical trial, because most people aren't going to do it just cause. Yes, sir?
How do you put categories of people in there? I understand it says healthy, so an immunocompromised person would probably
We
not
do it
be-
by ethnicity, we do it by age. There's a bunch of different things you look at. So I don't know if you've noticed, but when the first vaccines came out, it only said for individuals from this age group to this age group, and I think it was 16 to 72 or something like that, right? Because there's no data for younger people, because a pharma company is not gonna take a chance on a kiddo, right? So it's only after the safety profile has been realized, and we've been in the actual marketplace and actually had millions of doses of individuals and didn't see a lot of adverse reactions, that we now look at maybe looking at that profile for younger people. Because the worst thing that can happen is you have a younger person who has an adverse reaction. That would be terrible. Babies are precious cargo. Kiddos are precious cargo. Yeah.
Follow-up question, so when, this, okay, hold on. Where would you put pregnant?
I wouldn't touch pregnant females. I would, no way. They're not gonna be in the study. Too many things can go wrong.
Okay, so you really wanna take the safe, health, chunk of a population?
I wanna generalize to a normal population.
Yeah,
I
okay.
do not want any other comorbidities or any other things that might interfere.
So is it fair to say that basically, if you are pregnant, it is suggested for you not to take the vaccine?
Depends on where the vaccine is in its rollout.
Okay.
Okay, yes?
If they don't typically test pregnant people, then how do they know these side effects for a pregnant person?
They don't. Yep.
So I just took a tetanus shot yesterday?
That one has a profile for 50 years.
Yeah, that's a.
That's
very-
different.
Alright.
Okay.
My calves were cramping last night. I was like, I have tetanus!
Okay, so here's the interesting thing. You don't actually take the vaccine against tetanus, you take it against its toxin.
Oh.
And it's a toxoid. It's a tetanus toxoid. So we've denatured the toxin so it doesn't even work like that. So what you had is what we call psychogenic response to the actual vaccine. You'll be okay.
That means it's all in my
That's
head,
right.
right? My right calf cramped up and I said, babe, 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 rub my leg, rub my leg. He's like, are you having the baby? What is it?
It's so cute the way
I was
things
like, I
happen.
think it's
Look,
the vaccine.
The pharma companies do not want people to have bad reactions.
So
Right.
don't take the risk.
They will not take a risk. They want a normalized population, and the normalized population, like for me, if I'm accepting people, if I'm doing the actual, screening for people going into the program, if the person is morbidly obese, I'm not letting them in. Okay? If they walk up and they're not going to get in.
It's uphill, then a lot of us be out.
Yeah.
I'd be
I
out.
want a normal population. I want to see how the drug, this is a drug, it has a pharmacological effect on the body. I want to see how the drug is going to react in a normalized population. Therefore, I can generalize to the entire population using statistics, right? If this is how many adverse reactions I had and how many side effects, which are different. Side effects are different, adverse reactions are different. Side effects are, I feel a little feverish, I'm a little tired, I have a little pain in the injection site. That's normal, that's the immune, those are side effects. An adverse reaction, hives, shortness of breath, anaphylactic reaction, Guillain-Barré syndrome. Those are bad. Yes.
Do you feel like like you were talking about what'd you say about you want a something group of people?
I want to.
I'm sorry, I'm
No,
trying
go
to-
ahead.
I'm trying to think of the word you said, like you want a population that describes, a small population that describes the population of the bigger.
Right, so I want to
picture,
be able to
right?
generalize,
Do you
right.
feel like that has changed, like how the population is picked now versus how it used to be picked? Do you feel like that's changed in a
No.
sense?
It's supposed to be, it's supposed to be so that we can generalize, right? It's supposed to be a cross-section of the population so that we can generalize.
But do you feel like that they pick more, so like say generally there's more, there's different, I'm trying to say this
Proportion?
in a way, there's not as many, America isn't dominated by white people anymore, there's a lot more races in America now.
It's still dominated by, the largest percentage of population in America is still white.
Yes, but do you feel like they
And
pick
his,
it
and
more?
Latinos are considered white.
To add to that though, like the majority of the American population is unhealthy and obese. So if you are taking these general populations of healthy people, how applicable is that to the rest of the world that is
Well,
not really
this
that
is the
healthy?
way to look at that. If we have a population that's generalized and we can use a cross-section and look at it, so then there's less likely that there's gonna be adverse reactions in the unhealthy population. Whereas
they
if you
take-
have an unhealthy population in the clinical trial and they have problems, now you've really confounded the actual clinical trial with the unhealthy population, and now we'll never be able to use the vaccine.
So that's.
Or any drug, right?
So that's why you're saying that they generally only take healthy people with no
Because you don't want the
adverse
data to
health
be
reactions.
confounded by other comorbidities.
Yes, so, because if it works in the healthy person, then it's definitely gonna work in the unhealthy person.
No, but listen, if it works in the healthy person, it's less likely to cause
cause the
damage or
adverse.
problem in the unhealthy
Okay.
individual. Okay, there's a difference. The last part of the clinical trial, there are thousands of people, right, all over, and now we can really generalize, right? We can say, okay, this is what happened, these are the types of, so you heard people say things like, well, it appears that the immune response was effective up to 6 months. You heard them say that, right? That's because they were generalizing. And some people in that clinical trial, it was good for 2 years. But on the average for that entire population, 6 months was the target.
Can it be different in different people?
Absolutely.
Like
The
6
black
months for one
our
person,
black
2 months for
population, our black population is a population that is less understood.
another? Mhm.
Because they don't really come out and volunteer.
That's due to the herpes thing that happened.
They don't trust the medical institution.
That's because of the herpes thing that happened.
Oh, you mean the
Syphilis.
Tuskegee?
Yeah, Tuskegee trial.
That's the syphilis, we'll talk about that later, right, yeah. That's a, I don't wanna talk about that today, okay? Everybody with me? So then, when the clinical trials were going on, the companies, Moderna and Pfizer, BioNTech, looked at the safety profiles, and they ran them through models, and their models said, the clinical trials are gonna pass, and they're gonna pass with this huge margin. And both of them said, we're gonna take a risk, and we're gonna start making vaccine now, using the formulation that we are using for the clinical trials. So people criticized them when they said, how can you get approval from the FDA and the next day ship out vaccine? Because they were made months before, right? We were ahead of the curve. This is the fastest we've ever moved, right, on anything. But we saved a lot of people's lives by doing so. Science. Yes.
What would happen if it like hadn't worked and they had just
Then
spent all this money?
they would have lost billions of dollars in potential revenue, because it all would have gone to waste.
Wow.
We would not have shipped it.
They were really confident.
They were
Well,
very
because of the
confident.
modeling they can do, right? The models are so efficient and so effective nowadays that you can run them for that, right? There was a model that was done for an Alzheimer drug by, I think, Merck. And the model would basically said it would work for half the population, but not the other half. They still made the drug. Because
benefits
the
outweigh-
profit and the benefits were gonna far outweigh
I take
the
it.
ineffectiveness of that. Now, listen, so if you take it and you're developing Alzheimer's,
Just
and
slows
we
them
can
down.
stop that from happening in 50% of the population,
Why
and
wouldn't
that's a good thing.
Because
Whereas if
the-
we don't do it, and the 100% of the population who's developing Alzheimer's all develop Alzheimer's, then we've lost that many people.
Well, the population with Alzheimer's is already, it's not a high number, it's not a low number, I guess it's kind of a marginal number. So if you have that, that's a huge difference, but I do have a question.
Yeah.
When the clinical trials are in place, they're happening right now, are they hush-hush or are they public information?
They're never public information. Do you know why?
Because of HIPAA.
Oh, okay, I never even thought of that.
Oh.
But,
I
okay,
think
so
that-
let me tell you around why I don't even think about HIPAA. Because all the clinical trials are run in a double-blind manner.
Mhm.
What that means is when we take that, we give that person who's donated their blood or whatever, we give them a unique identifier that only a few people know. And then the individuals who are actually doing the testing,
Don't know.
they don't know either.
And the person.
So it's
yeah.
double blind, and that way we take out all the possibilities of somebody cheats.
But in the case when the vaccines for COVID came out, and everybody was, not everybody, but a very large number of people were very freaked out by it.
How about the
um,
vaccines?
Because they thought they were so new. Why
Well, I
couldn't
mean, I
they-
had people come up to me and tell me, you're supporting, you're supporting, what do they call it? Gene therapy.
Yeah,
They said,
yeah.
you're supporting gene therapy. I'm like, there's no gene therapy going on here.
Why couldn't they have come out and said, no, we've been doing this for years?
They did.
No, I don't know.
I watched them talk about it.
Different people
Did-
get different kinds of news, like.
I watched them
here
talk
and
about it for
there,
3 hours.
Who did?
I did, I watched
No,
it.
who talked about
The
it?
FDA, Pfizer, Moderna, Fauci, all those guys, all the people that certain people hate. Right?
Well, I feel like the companies that made the drugs were a little less trusted because it happened so fast.
But why
I guess,
nobody knew
but
about Moderna?
I don't know.
And you know why it's called Moderna?
Why?
Modern RNA. That's why it's
Oh, I
called
didn't know
Moderna.
that.
That's funny.
So, I mean, to me, I was looking at the profiles the whole time, and I told my wife, I said, as soon as we can get them, we're gonna get them. However, we didn't fit in any of the categories that are gonna be first, second, even third round. We weren't until the general population.
Mhm.
Right.
Why did they just let the fear go?
Why, what?
Why did they just let the fear go? Why didn't they try to stop that misinformation more?
They did.
We
They
couldn't.
didn't, or
I mean,
people wouldn't have
I
been
mean,
making it.
even when I tried to explain to my family wouldn't believe me.
I guess that's the people.
And
that-
they trust me. Actually, not very much, I guess. Because like, a lot of them said,
They trust you to an extent.
yeah. Well, yeah, so anyway, but, you know, the profiles are really good. Now, to me, the profile of the Pfizer-BioNTech one was a little better, so that's the vaccines we took.
I
But the
guess-
Moderna one was just okay, but there was a little more serious side effect. People really reported a lot
That's
of
the
pain when they got the vaccine. But that's a side effect, that's not an adverse reaction. We'll talk about the difference in a minute, okay? So here's the other thing, the J&J, and you know I'm a J&J boy. You know I'm a J&J boy.
No way.
I worked for them I love them.
I was
But
trying to get the J&J.
their safety
I heard bad
profile
things
was
about that.
not near as good as the other two companies. So when they offered me a J&J vaccine, I said no. I said, I will wait 2 weeks to get the Pfizer-BioNTech one. Now, if they said something like, we have the Moderna one and we can't get the Pfizer-BioNTech one for 2 months, I would have said, give me the Moderna. I'm okay with that, but I don't want the J&J.
I just feel like everyone needs a medical background.
You do. That's why you're here.
But
Yep.
I mean, like a general population, because people just don't understand.
Well, so Tay, unfortunately, I don't get involved in uncivil discourse anymore
Mhm.
because it's not civil. People get really mad at me when I start telling them the truth. Right? So I just don't do it anymore. My wife would always say, would be like at parties,
Well, like
and I would go on and on and on. And all that ended up after that was I was known as a know-it-all and somebody who didn't believe
Well,
what
and
they
that's
did.
what happens from both sides of the spectrum.
Oh, I know, and we're gonna talk about
People
that in a
are-
minute. But
They're mean.
for me now, this is my platform. I tell you all the science. I tell it to you truthfully. You can check everything I say, and you can decide whether or not you wanna be pro-vaccine or not. I am not here to change your mind. Not here. That's not my job. My job is to tell you the science. Yes,
Yeah, I have one more question, so,
I'm glad you guys have a lot of questions.
Sorry, I really don't wanna get super deep, but, I'm trying to understand, so we were just kinda talking about, would you agree that when they were released and approved, that they were targeting elder people and people that were not as healthy?
Absolutely.
So why is that?
Because those are the individuals that are more likely to have serious illness and die.
So you wanna
Protect them.
protect them, hoping that they don't have the adverse effects.
That's why that first round, like he was talking about the
Yeah,
first
yeah.
round, with elderly, anybody over 65 and
people and
Smokers.
stuff like that.
People at risk.
Okay, so they do that really
Yeah,
to try
yeah.
to increase the chance of helping them first, like.
So with the vaccines, their function is to avoid serious illness and death.
That's what makes.
I found it very interesting that each trials are done with a really healthy individuals to analyze it, but then therefore flip over and the first people that are given to are the
Because
ones that
as
are
I said
healthier.
before, if it works in a healthy population, it's less likely that there's gonna be serious problems with the unhealthy population. That doesn't mean it doesn't happen.
I was gonna say, it doesn't really make that much sense though, right?
It does.
You won't give my grandma a booster, you're gonna kill my grandma.
My aunt, who we're working with right now, because she has a lot of problems, took the first 2 vaccines for COVID. And then she started listening to the news and won't take another one.
That's my mom.
Because she said, there's too many bad things that are happening with the vaccines. I'm like, what do you mean? She can't tell me, but she's heard certain people say it, and that's who she believes. So both my wife and I are scientists. I am an immunologist, microbiologist, mycologist, bacteriologist. My wife is a forensic scientist. And she won't believe us, but she'll believe the person who's telling the story on the radio.
Well, there's really, really scary information out there.
There is.
Like, there's.
And listen.
Very scary.
If you ask me, can vaccines cause severe damage? The answer is yes. Can sugar cause severe damage?
Alcohol.
Sugar? Oh,
To
can I?
like blind people, that
Okay.
information. But it's been proven. to
Samantha, did you
where
wanna say something?
Your phone, your.
Well, I just wanted to say that-
Information that correlates with the side that you're already on.
I know.
Okay.
Therefore.
All right, let's go on
I
then.
know, it's
So,
scary.
here, oh yeah.
Like Facebook.
So for the, during the clinical trials at what stage do they pay people, or is it throughout, if
If-
no one is?
So, they can start paying people immediately. Because some people just are not going, they're not gonna be socially engaged to wanna go ahead. There was one young girl, I don't remember, she was from Oregon or Washington or something like that, who signed up for a clinical trial only because she wanted to help other people. She didn't want any money, she was one of the first people, and so that's pretty cool. They didn't pay her, but they paid a lot of other people.
Cause I got offered to do a clinical trial, I can't remember for
Pharmaco,
what.
well, it's not called Pharmaco anymore.
I
But
didn't want
we have,
Even though-
we have 3 big companies here. We're like a hub for clinical trials in Austin, Texas, right? Pharmaco, I think they changed their name, I don't think they're Pharmaco anymore. But they do really big, and so, you can make $3,000 for 2 weekends.
They're really
That's
fun.
not bad. And not only that, but you can go in, I mean, if you get, I would do one also, we're gonna test a antifungal drug. I'm like, oh, for ringworm? Yes. They're gonna put it on my feet? Do it. I'll get $3,000 for that. All you have to do is you have to stay with them for that weekend. Because they need to be monitoring you and they need to be testing your blood ever so often.
3-week
Shit,
thing.
no kid, no cleaning the house.
Did you have a question?
Oh.
I have a question regarding like Moderna and.
I can't hear you.
I had a question regarding like Moderna and,
Pfizer?
yeah, so a lot of people were getting like against, like, you know, which on the here or not, so like if you got the Moderna and you got like a booster that's like Pfizer, does that affect like, they're
Yeah,
the
it's
same,
okay.
right?
It's okay.
I call it the vaccine cocktail, I got that.
Yeah, it's perfectly okay. Early on, we didn't have any data to support that, but as we started to get into the rollout of the different vaccines, we started to see that the profiles were just like each other. So there was no real difference.
So they're the same, like.
No, they're not the same. They're a little bit different, and they're not gonna tell us exactly how they did it. What we do know is the mechanism is the same. They're mRNA vaccines. That's what we know.
So like.
And I will tell you that if you look at the safety profiles, to me, the Pfizer-BioNTech one is a little more safe than the Moderna one. But I'm just looking at side effects, right? Because I didn't want my family to get a lot of fever and then blame me and say, see, you poisoned me. Because they will do that, Jen, right?
Or there's always someone that's, you know, at fault.
Yeah. So let's look at the 5 different types of vaccines. Well, you have the DNA and RNA. The new kid on the block is messenger RNA, right? That falls into this category. And the messenger RNA, people don't know this already. We already had it used with Gardasil. Gardasil is the same mechanism. And so here we have these new COVID vaccines. Now, the really cool thing about using messenger RNA is all we have to do is have the transcript for the new virus, and we can use the transcript of the new virus with the same formulation. Therefore, we can make vaccines much quicker, and we don't even have to put them in clinical trials anymore if they are not significantly different. So that's why they're doing this new bivalent COVID vaccine.
This is really the reason why COVID came out so quickly.
What's that?
This is the reason why the COVID vaccine came out so quickly, because
We had a lot of
experience,
research. We had
and it was
years
a
of
messenger
research.
RNA.
People don't get that, but they did. So we have live attenuated. Live attenuated is the virus that is, or the bacterium that is alive. It is still gonna do its thing, but we've taken all the virulence factors away from it, so it's not gonna cause infection. Now, this one, the live attenuated, has been known to revert to virulence. Now, what does that mean?
It's
It
gonna
will-
happen.
It causes the infection it's supposed to protect against. The 2 times that it reverted to virulence have been with the polio vaccine, and both of those times, the vaccines were not made properly. One of them happened in the 1950s. You can read about it. It's in a book called The Cutter Incident. And the other one just happened about 3 years ago in a vaccine that was made by a different company in a different country and sold to certain parts of the world in Africa. Africa had spent so much money on these vaccines, they decided to roll with it, even though they knew that it might revert to virulence, and it did. That's a government making that decision. But those were not any of the companies that we are dealing with now, okay? So the third one is inactivated. This is the whole infectious agent, but it's dead, okay? So it has all the epitopes, it has all the binding sites, and so now the immune system doesn't know it's dead, it just knows it's not part of the body, and so it makes all these different antibodies against it. Yes?
Is the flu vaccine a
It's
live one? No. What is that one?
it's this one.
Inactivated? Okay.
The one that they had been using nasally was an attenuated vaccine. I don't know that they're doing that
Okay.
anymore. And by the way, if
They
you take a flu vaccine, don't take the nasal one.
They do it for kids.
I would say don't do it.
Intravenous.
It just doesn't, no, not intravenous,
Or
sub-Q.
IM.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Intramuscular,
They
yeah.
offered it to me when my daughter was a baby, but I told them no. Cause I
To
would
me,
rather,
they
I
don't,
would much
to
rather a needle
me,
stick.
to me, they don't work.
Yeah,
They
I
don't
would
work.
much rather a needle stick than up the nose for a 9-month-old.
I don't understand how that's supposed to work. It just goes to the mucous membrane and drips down the back of your throat and then.
Well, but some of it's gonna get into the bloodstream.
How?
Because it'll go right through the capillaries of the nose.
But like that's like the smallest
And
amount.
that's all you need. You don't need very much.
But that's useless. What if you sneeze?
Well,
and
that's why,
I would say.
that's one of the reasons why I say don't do it. Okay? So, another type is the subunit one. The subunit one is recombinant technology, where we make the small proteins in the lab, and we then inject those small proteins in the body. And the immune system doesn't recognize whether it's a whole thing or just a piece of thing. So if this is the cell, and this is the only thing that gets put into our bodies, the immune system will recognize that as non-self, it'll make antibodies against us, and then it'll attack these things. And if you attack this part of whatever it is, it's still not gonna work. Pretty cool stuff, right? The last one, viral vector, has been used a long time. A lot of times what they'll do is they'll deliver the actual part of the cell to the body using a non-virulent virus. The virulent virus will get into the body, it'll act like it does, but it doesn't. They've taken all the, like it's a cold virus, right? But they've taken all the properties of making a cold. It just does, it acts like it normally does. It delivers the actual non-self entity, and then the immune system delivers it. This is what the J&J vaccine was like. Now, you guys know the J&J vaccine was a complete failure.
For COVID? No way.
Failure.
For people that got that,
Oh, no, it worked. It worked in them, but because of the safety profile, it was a failure.
So
Are
it
you
was
with
a more
me?
dangerous route.
I don't know that I'd say that, but it had more adverse reactions.
Okay.
Okay? It's no longer on the market. J&J took it off themselves. J&J said, no, we're having troubles. Take it off the market now, we'll take the hit. So they took billions of dollars of investment as a hit.
That was the one dose one, right?
Yep.
I was trying.
But how did they not establish that during the trial?
They saw that it might do something, but they had no idea that there were gonna be that many people that are gonna react to it that way.
So that was a gamble, basically. It was approved, but it was still not
They
clear.
thought that their profile was good enough, because what they were looking at, okay, this many side effects, but no adverse reactions, and here's the safety profile, it's okay.
I mean, that's a good thing too, that they took it out, took it in and whatnot, but for me, it's interesting that they had the trial, it was approved.
Well,
it was good
first
to
of all,
go.
here's the thing that nobody knows. The J&J vaccine came out number 3, right? Pfizer, BioNTech, Moderna, then J&J. If you come out number 3, we call that loser. You lost the race to help people. So even though it wasn't being used that much, it had some adverse reactions. And J&J does not want to appear as a company that hurts people.
They make a lot of baby stuff.
Yeah, I was like,
But they also
Baby
got caught for
soap.
like putting some crap in the baby
Yeah,
soap and
baby
baby
powder.
lotion.
Not baby
Stuff.
soap, it was baby
Baby
powder.
powder. It was like
Okay, now
top.
hold on, time. So there is no true scientific evidence that the baby powder caused cervical cancer. All there is anecdotal evidence.
It was the soaps too.
I didn't know about the soap.
It's like formaldehyde was used in them or something.
No, it was something else, but they were,
I have not heard of that
I
story.
think it was a bunch of babies started having reactions to the soap all of a
Oh,
sudden.
okay, I didn't
And
know
that's why
that.
they came out with the clean and clear, like the new ones, and they remodeled all the bottles and
Like
stuff.
the 7th generation stuff your wife.
Yeah,
Okay.
I didn't really care.
So I know I've just destroyed the J&J name just a minute ago, right? But let me tell you why I'm a J&J boy. Besides me working for them, and I know that, I mean, even when we got into these rooms about products that were not working, we would always take the more conservative route and just say destroy it. We would never take a risk. In the late 1970s, there was a person who had put cyanide in the capsules of the Tylenol medication.
Oh, I just read it for documentary.
So J&J responded by saying, it can't be us. We didn't do this. However, we don't want to take the risk that anybody's going to be hurt by this. So they took all their products off the market, every one of them. Right? But my facility that was in Round Rock was where the focal point was. I wasn't working there yet. I was still in high school when this happened. But when they came, they said that the FBI showed up in helicopters armed to the teeth. And they came into the facility and they rounded everybody up because they didn't know what was happening. So every one of those people had to stay there through midnight, and they had to be interviewed by the FBI. What we found out was, and there's a book written about this, what we found out was there was a person who was playing the stock market who was actually doing this, and he killed, I think, 4 people.
And they were mainly children
Mhm.
in Chicago.
So, J&J basically said,
Huh?
we know we didn't do this, however,
You should put in cyanide.
we are not gonna take a chance, and they took everything off the market. And from that particular incident, they found out who it was. He had moved to a country that doesn't extradite. So that person was over there. He made billions, I don't know what to say, millions of dollars off of this trade. I mean, he moved, right, and we couldn't get him back. But from that one thing, there were lots of innovations that happened. Some of those I got to work on. Some of the innovations that were worked on at J&J were, we no longer would do capsules because you could open them up and put stuff in it. So from that came the gel cap. The gel cap is actually done by having this gelatin that has got food coloring in it, and they dip half of it in one, they pull it out, it goes through a dryer, comes back around, they turn it around, they dip the other side, and now you've got a gel cap. Nothing can penetrate that gel cap. You'd have to break it. Innovation number one. The second innovation was the cap. When you put the cap on there and you tighten it up, you put pressure on it, the cap would seal to the actual bottle. You know how hard it is to open up a J&J vial or whatever? Okay. The third innovation that happened was the foil seal. So when you have the foil seal on there, the seal hits there, and we always told people, if the foil seal looks like it's crimped at all, do not use it. We consider it adulterated, right? And that's when the word adulterated started to be used by J&J, and it's used all over the world now as any product that potentially is contaminated.
I read the book about that incident.
It's fascinating.
It is, it's very fascinating, but it paranoid me. So I'm telling you, even my shampoos, I'll like open it up, make sure the cap is still there, everything, coffee. And I'll just press around to make sure there's no
My
holes.
group came up with a really great idea to save money.
Hi, is this anybody's? Nobody? Maybe I think from your earlier class. I'll come back.
My group came up with a really good idea to save money. We said, why do we put the cotton in the dang bottles? That was an old school thing that was put in when we were selling, long before me, when they were selling the actual pills in glass containers. Because if we didn't put the cotton in there, the pills would hit again to break.
Oh.
So we said, let's take the cotton out and save, I don't know, this many millions of dollars. We did. And guess what happened? We
People
got phone
stopped.
calls from lots of
People were
people
pissed.
saying, we think somebody's messing with your product because there's no cotton in it anymore. And then we would say, well, we took it out. You need to put it back in right now. You need to put it in right now.
That's what I
We
used to
want
take my
cotton.
tuna Polish
And so,
coffee.
isn't that interesting? So, I mean, most people, when they open up one of these foil seal things, they get the cotton, they just throw the cotton
Yeah,
away.
it's so annoying.
I always leave mine in.
That's what we thought.
I
Oh,
thought it was
no.
a purpose. I
We-
always leave it.
oh, We tried to take the cotton out, we got yelled at, we put it back in. Sorry, man.
I've always.
Luckily, our compliance officer said, we would like to have a NDA, a revised NDA, right, a new drug application, to basically say that we can sell our product with or without cotton. Because if they would have said without cotton only, we'd have to start all over.
Is that really the only reason cotton's in there? I've always thought there was like a purpose behind it, so I never take it out.
Everybody does. That's the only reason.
I buy vitamins.
Was the cyanide guy, was he a J&J employee, or was it just a random dude?
Just some dude.
And
How do you get
open
what?
them in the store and
Like at the
put it in.
store?
So they
He had on a syringe, he would go in the store when nobody's looking, and he would inject the cyanide into the cap. Because in those days, you just open, and the cotton in there was no protection.
And they could
Because we,
smell, like,
we're
the
American,
almond
we take care of each other, we don't hurt
cyanide.
each other here. That's changed a lot lately.
They ended up knowing that they were all from the same group number and they
That's
could
why,
smell
I mean, we have pictures of, and they're not, I wasn't there, but we have pictures of the FBI coming in, like, with
I bet.
massive helicopters landing on the front lawn, and like all the news people were out there, and we were all
I bet
convicts.
so
you know,
many people like shit their pants. They were like, "Oh my god, what is going on?"
Well, they didn't know it was the Tylenol for a really long time, so I think there was one family where it was like the wife died and then the husband was like grieving and had a headache and took the Tylenol and died in front of the family or something, like it was like really crazy.
So, I mean, the American population will forgive you if you throw yourself on the sword, and J&J definitely threw themselves on the sword.
That's the only
They
thing
said,
you can do.
our employees were not involved with this, however, we're not gonna take any chances. We're
Well, if
taking
they would have
everything out.
said it's not our problem, they would have gone under.
Oh, J&J would not have gone under.
Or
They have
in that,
way too much
in
money.
that field, they probably.
Oh, and by the way, I don't know if you know
but-
this, but J&J is about to break up.
Huh?
So
It's
just
gonna be
be-
Johnson versus Johnson.
No, they're taking all the profitable companies and moving them to the pharma group, and then they're taking all the non-profitable and moving them into a consumers group.
Is that tacky?
But it's not gonna be the only thing that's gonna be J&J is the pharma group. They're not gonna do anything with Band-Aids or anything anymore. No profit. They're gonna make huge profit over here though. So I've got a lot of stock in J&J. I'm like, oh hell, what are they gonna do to my stock? please give me the one that's gonna make a lot more money, and not the one that dies, right? It's not gonna, they're never gonna die. I mean, J&J is a good company, they're never gonna, but they're not gonna make a lot of money. All right, let's go on. So, here's what should happen with vaccines. They should have a low level of adverse effects on us, right? It should protect us from all forms of whatever infectious agent it is. It should stimulate both antibody, both B cell and T cell immunological responses. It should be long lasting. It should not require numerous doses or boosters, right? And it should be inexpensive and have a relatively long shelf life. Right? So people will say, well then if you say that, why do we have so many boosters for well, because we just were in a pandemic, and when we started to notice that the protection was waning, we'd say probably we need to wake up the immune system again. And so now, there's this bivalent form coming out. I'll probably take it, but it's not gonna be necessary for everybody, probably. Young folks are probably not gonna need it. Yeah.
So you said, inexpensive. Why is it, would it be like insurance reasons why it's a different cost at so many different places? Not like the COVID vaccine, like, per se for my daughter. So I have to take her to her well check, and then if she needs shots, I have to take her somewhere else because we don't have insurance. So again, I can't afford $100
There's a
for
margin.
vaccine.
There's a margin that's added, especially in physicians' offices. If you wanted to get the vaccine relatively inexpensive, you should go to the county.
That we go to different places. Now I have to go somewhere else because I have to go all the way to Dripping. But-
No, it's still gonna cost you something, but 36 versus
Well, it's like
250
her
is
doctor's
different.
office used to be in Wimberley, but they closed that one down and moved to Dripping. And I would go to San Marcos to the clinic, and it was $10. That was it. No matter what shots you got, it was $10. If you had four,
To
$10.
me,
If it was one,
to
$10.
me, vaccines should all be free. It's not gonna happen.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to pay like $100 at
So
this
the,
point.
like, for instance, the DTaP, or what do they call it nowadays?
TDAP.
Okay, fine. So those things are have such a good safety profile. They're so easy to make. It costs pennies on the dollar to make them. So they're pretty cheap.
Yeah, mine was free with insurance.
I'm gonna show you some data in a minute. Let's talk a little bit more. So here's a whole list of them. And so I'm not gonna talk about, so you can see there, I used to introduce mRNA vaccines. This was pre-pandemic, this slide. And now, you know, it's the dominant one. But I'm not gonna talk about those. But let's talk about side effects versus adverse reactions. So a lot of people think that they're the same, they're not. Side effects are you feel a little feverish, you feel a little bit achy, you feel a little bit of warmth, or you might feel a little bit of pain in the area where they give it. Those are all normal. Those are all the immune system working like they should be. Sometimes, may I introduce to you a beautiful word, an adjuvant. Sometimes we use and we add an adjuvant to the vaccine. And the adjuvant is an irritant. It irritates the body, and therefore if there's an irritation in the body, the immune system is gonna react a lot quicker. So that's why we add an adjuvant. But it doesn't really have an effect on it. It's usually a salt, which can be absorbed by the body fairly easily. Okay? That's why we add it. Yep. Adjuvant?
Mm-hmm.
So, but adverse reactions are different. Adverse reactions are hives or shortness of breath, anaphylactic reaction, and Guillain-Barré syndrome. Right? So I'm telling you the entire story. I'm not just cutting out the parts that make the whole vaccine thing look scary. Right? I'm telling you everything. And so 1 out of every 100,000 individuals will experience some form of adverse reaction. And a lot of times it's just hives, right? We tried to get away from that by asking people, are you allergic to any components in eggs? Because a lot of times for the early vaccines, a lot of them were the viruses were grown in eggs, and so the albumin would be in the actual vaccine. So we wanted to be sure that you wouldn't be allergic to egg protein, and so we would ask that question. But now with the Moderna one, we don't have to even grow them in eggs anymore because we're just using RNA.
Professor?
Yes, ma'am?
So I read that people could go in and out of becoming allergic to eggs.
So is it just primarily the albumin?
I've never, yes, it'd be albumin. I've never heard of that.
So-
But I love eggs, I'm not allergic to them, but I
I-
hope as hell I never get allergic to them because I love them.
So I noticed that every so often I'll have a period of where I cannot do eggs because I get really sick every time I eat them. But
You might
I
have an
will-
intolerance,
But then it'll go completely back to normal.
so you might have an intolerance. It's different than an allergic reaction.
It's like
Yeah.
a gut lining thing.
Yeah.
This is really off topic. What time are you gonna not be in lab? Like your office hour?
We're gonna, what time is it?
5 to 1.
So I'm planning on going there at 1:30 and being there till 2:30.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Would the same apply for if sometimes you get hives from shellfish or eating shrimp and then other times you don't?
So that's a different process. I would be very careful with that. If you've ever had hives from shrimp, your immune system, IgE is warning you. It's basically saying, I am allergic to shellfish. You are allergic to shellfish. You should not eat them anymore, ever.
Oh, damn.
I'm not kidding you.
I
Because the immune system gets primed. And when you eat them the first time and get hives, the next time you get them, you might go into anaphylactic shock.
If-
Yep.
Can you get hives internally, or say, for instance, I'm allergic to 100% aloe vera, and my sister, not thinking, tried to give me an aloe vera drink, and I just luckily I was paying attention. I looked at her, I'm
know
like,
that
dude,
you
are you
would
trying
get
to kill me?
hives inside,
Would
but
you
it
go
would
into
be more.
anaphylactic? Would it just
could.
swell up?
Your sister's very mean. I'm
Well,
sure
she
didn't mean to.
realized after I just looked at her, I'm like, are you serious, dude? And she's like, what? And she was like, oh my god, I'm so sorry. I'm like, yeah, dude, you're trying to kill me.
Yeah. So I think I told you about my anti-vax student semesters ago. One of the things she brought up, which was a fair question, but she thought she was gonna catch me again, because she tried to do it every day.
She sounds like a bully.
She was. But first of all, Guillain-Barré syndrome is a real thing. Now, Guillain-Barré syndrome
It's scary.
is when the immunoglobulins start to attack the lining of the spinal cord, or a lot of the other nerves. And then you get degradation of the actual nerves themselves, and so you have all kinds of problems. That is a true thing. It does happen with vaccines, but it can also happen with a lot of other things.
It can just randomly.
Right.
My mom was getting her kitchen redone from a family friend who's a
Yeah.
contractor, and he was in there telling him where the fucking granite or something, and he just fell over and he started I don't remember exactly what happened, but they called the ambulance and they had to take him all the way to San Antonio, and he had Guillain-Barré, and it was scary. He was in the hospital for months.
So
But he's totally back to normal now.
I never used to talk about Guillain-Barré syndrome when it comes to vaccines, but one of my students, not the anti-vaxxer, another student challenged me and said, why aren't you talking about Guillain-Barré syndrome? I said, well, because to me it falls under adverse reactions. So I'm not gonna talk about specifically, and he said, that's not fair, because you're leaving out a very serious problem. I said, I'll take that criticism, and after that I added it. Because I don't want people to think that I'm just leaving out part of the
I
story.
didn't know it was connected to vaccines in a way.
And a lot of other infectious agents.
Very, yeah.
And a lot of chemicals. Huh?
How is it connected to vaccine? What's in vaccine?
So the immune system gets stimulated and it overreacts.
And it can cause
Is
it
it
to attack.
reversible?
No. If the damage is actually done to the spine or nerves, it's not
I've
reversible.
heard saying can return back to normal, but they'll have symptoms of
Does it
things for the
affect
rest
my
of their
own
life.
cheek?
No, there was I think on the Olympics last year, one kid caught it when he was young. He was a swimmer.
Yeah, that was because of
He's
encephalitis.
he's returned almost to normal, but he has a limp now.
Okay.
And they told me he might end up in a wheelchair.
So, the one thing my anti-vax student said, well, what about theirs? I'm like, oh. So I said, well, she said, are you gonna she didn't even let me answer. She said, are you gonna tell me that the drug companies did not actually put this consortium together? I'm like, no, that's what happened. I said, the drug companies who make vaccines got together and said, we're losing so much time on research and other things, spending all our time trying to get people to understand what what an adverse reaction versus a side effect is. So they created this consortium, right, VAERS, which is Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System. So this group looks at all these adverse reactions and decides whether or not there truly is a real problem. And if there is a real problem, then they send it to a different group within the company that's being affected, and then they deal with it. But if it's not, they basically say, no, there's not. And then, of course, the person can always come back and say, oh, I'm gonna sue you anyway, and then that's just the way it is. But the companies are spending so much time fighting these cases that somebody said that they got a headache, and they shouldn't have, but that's a normal side effect, right? So VAERS was formed, and it's really become one of the watchdogs of the entire industry, right? So, again, if you complain to VAERS and they don't do anything for you, you can always hire a lawyer and do whatever you want, right? But this is why VAERS is here, right? So that it could take, they put a bunch of money in it, and they put a bunch of people working on it, so that they could go back and do research on other things, because they were spending so much time fighting. So, herd immunity, so you heard me before, I said that I believe the United States has reached herd immunity for COVID. There's enough of us that are vaccinated, enough of us that had the infection, or a combination of the two. And so now I think that if we have outbreaks, it's gonna be less severe, there's not gonna be very many people involved. But that doesn't mean that there's not gonna be a variant that's gonna throw us for a loop in the future. Right? That just means that based on what we see now, we've even stopped reporting in Travis County, we stopped reporting cases of COVID, and the cases of hospitalization and severe disease are so low right now. Let's hope it stays that way. Yep.
Did you follow much of the conspiracy stuff?
I tried not to. I mean, it's hard
Did
not.
you-
It's hard not
It's-
to.
It's just funny, but did you hear about the shedding?
Mhm.
They claimed, a specific person in my life claimed that if you were around, so if I came up to you and I spent an hour with you, that you would shed the vaccine to me.
No.
Did you hear that stuff?
I didn't hear that, but that's not true. It doesn't
Oh,
work.
I know it's not true. I thought it was funny. My mother-in-law is a big conspiracy nut in Capital, and she works with people who got it, diabetic, you know, stuff, people who have younger kids, and she was like scared. Like she started making herself have these reactions. Like she broke out in like hives, like bad stuff. And cause you know, when you tell your body it's sick, it's gonna act sick. And she told me that these people were shedding the vaccine to her. And I was like, I don't think so, but that's the thing. People really think that.
I mean, there's so much misinformation out there.
People really think that you could shed the vaccine to me.
I'm so curious about the next slide.
Okay, well, let's talk about it. Who said that?
Me.
Okay, so when you look at the reasons people don't get vaccine, this is flu. I just don't want the vaccine. I might get sick from the vaccine. So the vaccine itself, the flu vaccine, is inactivated. You're never going to get the flu. One of my students said, you know, I never took the flu shot, and then I took it and I got the vaccine. I got the vaccine and I got the flu. I said, well, unfortunately, those two things are mutually exclusive because the vaccine can never give you the flu. So if you got the flu after you took the vaccine, you were going to get the flu anyway. They didn't believe me, right? But you can see here, I don't think the flu vaccines work. That is true sometimes. Because when we make the flu vaccine, we're looking at the southern hemisphere and we're looking at the three most common strains of the flu that's causing the problems down there. And that's what we make the vaccines for here. Sometimes we get it wrong. Right? That's why you have to get a flu vaccine every year, because the infectious agents that are causing the flu are constantly circulating, right? For 3 years, we put H1N1 in the flu vaccine, and there was no necessary reason to put it in there other than we thought that H5N1 might come back, and it never did, like swine flu.
I thought H5 was different.
H5N1 is different.
You just said H5.
Oh, H1N1. H1N1.
Got it?
My bad.
Oh,
Yeah, okay. H1N1 is fine. H5N1's a whole different ballgame.
I
What
read-
would other be?
Other, whatever. I mean,
Don't have time.
yeah, whatever.
Stuff like that.
Things like that. But to be, so that you really understand kind of my life before, when I used to engage in
How many-
uncivil discourse, because it was never civil. Even though I tried to keep calm, they got really angry at me, and from both sides, right? So which side do you wanna do, right or left? Who do you wanna do first?
Right.
The right? So the right would basically say, do not tell me I have to take a vaccine. I know what's best for my body, I know what's best for my family, do not, it's in the Constitution. I can make those decisions for myself. Oh, and by the way, if you make me do that, then you're gonna come after my guns, and I don't want you to do that either. So these are the kind of things that I would get from people, right? The left is just as bad, right? So the left would say things like, well, I've done the actual research, and I can tell you that I don't understand why you want me to take the DTaP vaccine, because there hasn't been a case of diphtheria in the United States in over 60 years. But I do know that 1 out of every 100,000 individuals develop severe anaphylactic reaction when they take a vaccine. Why would I want to put little Johnny through that process if there's no diphtheria here? The reason there's no diphtheria here is
Because of the
because we've had
vaccine.
vaccines for 60 years.
I've heard that argument with polio. I'm like, dude, because there's vaccines, that's why we don't see it.
You can't say that to people because they immediately think you're a know-it-all and you're against them, and therefore, you know.
That's in all the cases, whatever side.
Anything you say these days.
Anything you say.
I don't
So,
understand how the medical industry
people
is political.
like data. So this was published with the World Health Organization. All these little pink bubbles are kind of epicenters of large outbreaks of infectious disease. The little kind of blobby looking is where the vaccine started, right? So let's look at rubella. You can see around 1968 or so, rubella vaccine came out, and look at the cases of rubella. Very little German measles anymore. Now, German measles showed up again in Europe and in the United States last year, but there was just a little bit of it. But that's just warning us of what's gonna come, because there's too many unvaccinated people in the world, right? If you look at mumps, you can see, then you have the mumps vaccine, and you can see very few mumps. In the last 2 years, 2020 and 2021, we've had 1 case of mumps at UT in December. They've done a really good job of sequestering that individual so it didn't spread. But there's a lot of people who are not vaccinated against mumps, which happens to be MMR, measles, mumps, rubella. Right? So you can see hepatitis A, vaccine, none. Hepatitis B, for a little while more, but then it's kind of under control now. Measles, you can see, oh my God, look at all the measles, and here it is, right? And so you can see very little measles. There have been outbreaks of measles, I see. There have been outbreaks of measles in certain parts of the country. A lot of times those were actually associated with populations that were not vaccinated, mostly for religious reasons, right? Different types of Jewish beliefs and things like that, right?
It happened in 2019 as well. It was a big population in Austin because, the
Mennonite,
population
Mennonites, right?
where
So-
it was didn't believe in the vaccines. I was
So
terrified.
chickenpox here, you can see diphtheria. Oh my God, we haven't case of diphtheria in years, right? And that's what that other person who was arguing with me or telling me the story about why should I do that. So pertussis, now something interesting going on with pertussis, because here you can see the vaccine came out, right, in about 1948 or so, and then the cases of whooping cough went way down. 15 years ago when I would teach this course, I would say the whooping cough was really an infection that was a nuisance. Nobody ever died from whooping cough. That has changed. We're losing people and babies also to whooping cough. And here's the problem. The millennial group, some of you are in that group, a lot of them did not get vaccinated, they didn't get their children vaccinated, and they are the carriers of whooping cough. So then they come in contact with them, they make little snuggly faces with the babies and they give them that. But there's been an increase in the cases of adult onset whooping cough, Mortella pertussis, right? It is the P in the DTaP, right? And so, but there's something going on with the organism itself. It has become more virulent. And so we need to put some resources in to do that, or we're gonna be losing people for things that really never hurt us, right? And then you can look at polio, we haven't seen it in so long. However, I will tell you
There were
that
those
for
couple of cases.
the last not in the States, but the last 2 years, when people have been looking at the COVID in sewer, right, in the sewer
Where was it, the
effluent.
UK?
New York. They also decided to do it for polio, and guess what they found? They found polio virus in the sewer. It's just a matter of time if we don't watch it.
Wasn't there like 2 or 3 people that broke out, last
Huge outbreak in somewhere in the Middle East.
Well, there was some here, not
I
in
don't
Texas,
remember
but
that.
it was like 2, like only like a very, very small number, like 2, under 5.
Okay, I don't know that at all. I don't know. Let me ask Samantha, because Samantha had her hand first. Samantha,
Hey, so I wanna know what category these fall into.
What do you mean?
Like the rubella vaccine, and then we have all of these different,
what do you mean category?
categories of like DNA, RNA, live attenuated, inactive.
Oh, the
subunit.
subunit.
Could you know those off the top of your head?
Yes,
by chance?
rubella, mumps, and measles are all inactivated. Hepatitis B and hepatitis A are subunit. Diphtheria, pertussis are inactivated. Polio is both inactivated and attenuated. The 2 vaccines are different, Samantha. So the Salk vaccine for polio is inactivated, but the Sabin vaccine is attenuated.
Is polio the liquid one for kids?
It's what?
The liquid one for
It's
kids?
a little, yeah, underneath, that's the attenuated one.
Yeah, okay.
The one that goes here, if you get polio here, that's the
I
inactivated
think
one.
my daughter had it and it's like grape flavored or some shit and they.
Grape
put it in-
flavor?
Yeah, they flavor them now.
I didn't even know they had flavor.
They do.
So, for instance, like say if I procreated with somebody and I've had my shots.
You mean if you had a baby?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or whooping cough,
Yeah,
would our child be less likely to get it or?
If you get it
well,
while
if
you're
they also
pregnant,
get it.
if you get it while you're pregnant, the Tdap, they say that it can go through the placenta and the baby can have antibodies for it.
yeah, but
That's,
it's gonna be
if,
short term.
if it's before, yeah, it's mainly to protect the newborn.
Well, I'm just like, cause like when I was nanny, that was like always like, kind of watch out, or especially like, or if my friends got pregnant and whatnot, and like for a young baby, like, that was always like, whooping cough, whooping cough.
So, yeah, no. So the best way to protect that child is to give them the vaccine. Inject it into it.
I know my midwife
at 8
explained
months.
it, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, or
Oh,
we
so
give the
let's
vaccine.
talk about that now.
Well, that's what
So-
my midwives explained to me, that's why you wanna get it when you're pregnant, so if they don't get it, or
Well,
there's a
but-
possibility
But
of it
there's
going
just,
through
I
the
mean, that's so
placenta.
short term, Terry.
But they're newborns.
I know,
The older
but
they
they're so
are.
short term that it's not really protective. Yep.
My sister is pregnant actually due around the same time as Sam, but she makes us get like our flu and our whooping
You
cough
should.
before we are able to
I
hold
mean,
the
to me,
babies.
It's just to keep you from
And
spreading
to
it.
me, if I had a newborn, I'm like, you little kid, you can go play in the dirt, but Aunt Ellie can't come to visit you if she's gonna bring her cooties with her.
Yeah. Oh, she's a pediatrician, like, we listen, but.
So, let's talk about what Samantha wants to talk about.
That night.
Or somebody. Somebody's
Me?
broken.
Sure.
So, huh?
Sure, me, cause I
Yeah.
never understand it.
So, this is the vaccine schedule. It seems quite aggressive.
Ooh, can you print this out?
Yeah, I mean, it's on the
the
PowerPoint,
CDC.
you can have it. And this isn't the most up-to-date one, this is 2019. There's probably new ones out. But let's just talk about this. So I always tell people, they always tell me, I just don't like the fact that my little tiny 8-month or 1-year-old kiddo has to take so many vaccines, right? And so if that's the case, then if you think that that's too aggressive, just back off on it a little bit. Instead of doing all of them at the same time, do one a month, or do something like that, right? But, I mean, again, I'm not here to change your mind about taking vaccines. You can decide I don't wanna do it, and that's fine. But, to me, I always tell folks, if she goes, we wanna take vaccines, we just don't wanna do them like that. I'm like, okay, back off on it. Just take a little bit at a time. Right? But the important thing, especially with a kid, is to hang out in the physician's office for about 15 minutes.
Remember when they're
Because
babies,
if you're
they don't
gonna have
remember.
an anaphylactic reaction, it's gonna be in the first 5. You might develop hives, Miss Jessica, in 15.
I watched my baby too. We were around that office.
Yes,
So I was born a pregnant and I have like this tooth
scars.
The 2 scars, you should only have 1.
I have
I'll show you mine if you show me yours. What is that?
I have no idea. I always wonder. People always ask me.
You
like,
took
what
a
is that?
vaccine, you don't know what it is?
I was so little. I was very young. So I remember I was like maybe 5
That's-
and it like swelled up.
That's
Oh my goodness.
Smallpox. Do they have this vaccine in America? Like,
I have mine.
It's not that bad anymore though, is it?
Oh, they don't give it anymore.
Yeah.
The
Okay.
only people who take smallpox, and I don't even know if they did it, if they do it now, but first responders were taking it for a little while after 911, because we were really afraid that somebody was gonna use smallpox. We do have about, in the United States, we do have about 30 million doses of smallpox.
because everybody in Poland has this scar.
I don't think
Gets
they
this
do that
vaccine.
anymore.
Maybe not anymore.
The last time we gave the smallpox vaccine in the United States was, I believe, 1976. Other than after 911, when that happened to us, and we started giving it to first responders. I went and stood in line to get it, and when I got there, they said, "Oh no, you're not a first responder." I'm like, "I'm a microbiologist." "Oh no, you're not a first responder." I'm like, "Fine."
So how come they give it to us in Poland and they don't give it to people in?
Your proximal distance to Russia.
Oh, okay. I always.
Russia's got some stuff.
Do they not have smallpox vaccines?
Who?
Russia?
Oh, they do.
But they do.
But Russia's got some stuff.
And even.
And I hate to point them out, but I'm gonna point them out because they piss me off when they invade
It
Ukraine.
pisses me off too.
But so, if you want to read a scary book, there's a book called, what is it called? I have it in my office. I will get it.
Can you put it on the announcements?
No, yeah. But this is a book that was written by a person who was in biopreparat in the UK, and I mean in the Ukraine, who was working on some of the infectious agents that they were using as a bioweapon. And he wrote this book. And he said that they created some real monsters. Like they took all the virulence factors out of.
You ever seen Stranger Things?
I have seen Stranger Things.
That's what's scary.
But I mean, it'd be worse than that. But so, but they took, like, for instance, the virulence factors out of bubonic plague and put them into something that's so easily deliverable like the flu. And they made these monsters.
Thought it
Oh, and by the way, when the former Soviet Union broke up, a lot of those places shut down. But some of the infectious agents were not accounted for.
So somebody
Where
has
are they?
them.
That's why, I don't know if you're keeping up with the war, that's why Russia is saying that the UK is gonna use bioweapons against them.
I was kind of wondering. Okay.
Because there was a lot of bioweapons in the Ukraine at the time. That was kind of a hub for bioweapons research. Because Russia didn't want it on their sovereign territory, they wanted it in one of the buffers. And Russia has always thought, as all those countries, Poland and Belarus, and all those countries as buffers from NATO.
So when the kids, when they're babies, why do they have to do the 2 doses of flu before they're 1?
I'm not sure. I
I was
don't have an
wondering.
answer to that.
It's like I can't remember if they told me, it's been a while, she's almost 4 now.
So probably.
I know it was before she was 1, and they said something, they offered it to me, to her, but they said it would have to be 1 dose, and then I came back 30 days later for another dose.
Okay, so I don't know if this is the right answer. This is my hypothesis, that the amount of antigen in there is so dilute, so that we don't give a full dose to the children, to the babies, and therefore you want to give them one to get them primed and another one to get them ready. Okay.
Yeah, they said it was only before she was 1, so I had just waited till the next year, but, I was just curious, cause I couldn't take off work to go another time in 30 days, that was my thing. But they said it had to be 30 days.
Hey folks, so I'm gonna see what else, where?
We're only like 2 slides from the end.
Well, okay. Okay, yeah. But, I do wanna tell y'all that unfortunately I just, before we lecture, I looked at my email and I forgot, I have a meeting at 3 o'clock with, the awards people for, ACC. I'm not getting an award,